guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoilery gush for If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I already did a non-spoiler review if you want to watch that, if you haven't read this book, because I will be having spoilers in this video. This is all I want to talk about is spoilery stuff. Again, I don't even want to go into the atmosphere stuff. I kind of just want to talk about the characters and then the ending, right? The ending. So first, character-wise, I think Philippa is like probably my favorite of all the characters. I like that she was such like this like background, unassuming character that also was like so smart and knew the most, and that Oliver at the end was like, if she had done it, we probably would have gotten away with it. Like, amazing. Like for a while there, I thought that she did do it. Like even before he was like, oh, I found the scrap of, you know, fabric. I was like, it was her. Stone cold. She's the best. She's my favorite. In Dark Academia, I tend to love the like quiet, lonery type, like kind of closed off type the most when we have these like groups of Dark Academia characters. So she was always gonna be a favorite. Richard, the worst, right? Like I did not, when I got into this book, I did not think that he would be like truly the villain, right? Like this awful, abusive to all of his friends. The fact that like he turned like on a dime. I mean, obviously he already had like that demeanor to him, but as soon as James he thought was like taking over for him, he just like snapped, became just the most awful human. So like, as far as the question of like, were they in the wrong? I kind of feel like they weren't. I kind of feel like it was justified that they let that man die. He was fucking awful. Like, because it was very like obvious he would not have stopped, right? Like if he would have recovered, he would have murdered all of them. The fragility of a white man. Whew, rough. I figured it was James, because I was like, okay, it's not Oliver. Then I was like, well, how did Oliver, you know, like get into prison for this then? And then when he started finding things and hiding them, I was like, boy, you're getting your fingerprints all over everything, but I didn't expect the ending, but we're not gonna get to that yet. Meredith. I like Meredith fine, but like, I really don't get her dynamics, like her dynamics with Richard, because we have that like pre-page one. I was like, okay, her going for Oliver, like, still isn't quite clear to me as like, did she care? Did she not? Why did she go for him so fast? Like, besides just not being able to be alone, but like, that just felt a little bit more disjointed to me. Like, I wasn't quite like on board for that. And it just seemed like it was there a little bit as like a hindrance to him like figuring stuff out with James sooner. So yeah, like their dynamic, and even at the end when like she hadn't really seen him in prison and then he goes to her and like he's kind of like, I'm thinking of everything as our and whatever, like our bed and our place. I'm like, do you view her as a person? Like totally? I don't know. Like that whole dynamic, I don't really like that. I don't really like that. Ren, I feel like I don't have like such a beat on, and I feel like we didn't get enough of Ren and James's dynamic thing where Oliver's like, James is in love with Ren and they're in love with each other and whatever. And I'm like, are they? That one wasn't quite clear to me, honestly. And then James, yeah, that romantic tension with him and Oliver, like the whole time, stunning, great, perfect. So the end though. So like when Oliver is like, I did it. Again, we have him being the martyr. He's always gonna be the best friend. He says that whole thing where he's like, what if Benvolio would have said I killed Paris, whatever. It works for him because I feel like he doesn't think things through. However, I'm just like, I don't know. And also like, would James have like, I almost feel like, would James have had not as bad of a sentence as Oliver did, because he like said that he's like, oh, I killed him in a jealous rage. If James truly had said like, this is an accident and here's all this evidence of this dude like trying to fucking kill us all the time, like, would he have had that bad of a sentence? But they're like, oh, James is fragile. And it's like, is he? But him doing it, and that's the whole tragedy of the ending, right? So let's like talk about the ending a little bit. Him doing that, and then James potentially killing himself. It's like, he did that to make sure that everyone had a happy ending, but then they didn't. But then they didn't, which is a tragedy of the whole thing. So again, tragedy, right? Like, it all makes sense narratively, that like, whether it was for a good reason or not, the whole thing is that it's tragic, and it is. So the ending. Is James actually alive? Did James fake his own death? I don't know. When people are like, what do you think happened next? I'm like, I kind of feel like he didn't. Like, I feel like he actually is dead, because that's the whole tragedy, right? I hope that he's not. But I kind of feel like Oliver's gonna continue to ruin his own life in this obsession with James, right? If we're looking at this from a tragedy. If we look at this as like a not tragedy and they've broken the cycle of the tragedy and like, you know, Ghost Richard from the grave got his comeuppance and like, whatever, then hopefully he's not dead and then he does find him or whatever. But then it's also like he's gonna leave Miranda again and whatever. Is her name Miranda? Meredith. Have I been saying Miranda this whole time? What is her name? Meredith? Meredith. Have I been saying Miranda the whole time? I'm sorry. But then he's gonna leave her again, which is kind of fine because again, I don't really think they're a good match anyway. I really just want him, in my ideal world, he lets James be, if that's the case, if like whatever happens, happens, and he's besties and platonic life partners with Philippa. I think that would be the best like ending. But I like the vagueness of this as much as it can be infuriating. I love sort of like a vague ending for a book like this. I think that that actually worked fairly well because wrapping this up with a pretty little bow would have been unsatisfactory. Even though the vagueness of the ending is going to be it's unsatisfactory for some people, but like for me, I think it worked. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the characters and the ending and things? I would love to know. So comment below, let me know what you thought of If We Were Villains. Thank you all for watching and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.